Hey, I'm Ashley Jackson, and this is Push the Next Generation, your Gen Z coded guide to power and politics. Today we're breaking down our government, our generation, our future, all of it. Now, I don't know about you all, but I'm tired. It's been 1 month under the Trump-Musk regime, and I'm just tired. But I've also been doing a lot of thinking about where we are, where we've been, where we're going, and where I can contribute. And, that means a lot of time with self, thinking through our empathy deficit and the fall of democracy. Small things. And I'll share my public-facing plans in this new era with you all in the near future, but in the meantime, I can assure you that work will also involve continuing to spotlight some thought leaders that I believe have answers and nuggets of truth that I hope will resonate with our community we're building and equip us for resistance. Now, if you haven't already, please subscribe to our YouTube channel, Push the Next Generation, recommend it to a friend, write a review, follow on socials at Push the Next Generation Pod, and subscribe wherever you listen to your podcasts. This week, I'll be speaking with Van Jones. He is a U.S. media personality, entrepreneur, and world-class changemaker. Jones has a rare track record of bringing people together to do hard things in areas as diverse as clean energy solutions, criminal justice reform, and racial inclusion in the tech sector. In 2007, Van was the primary champion of the Green Jobs Act, signed into law by George W. Bush. In 2009, he worked in the Obama White House as special advisor for green jobs. In 2018, he helped pass the First Step Act, signed into law by Donald Trump. The New York Times calls that legislation the most substantial breakthrough in criminal justice in a generation. In 2021, Jones was the first recipient of Jeff Bezos' Courage and Civility Award. He has since founded Dream Machine Innovation Lab and launched Rapport.co, which uses AI to increase firms' EQ. A Yale Law School graduate, Van is a CNN host, an Emmy Award-winning producer, a 3-time New York Times bestselling author, and the creator of the Van Jones Substack. Welcome, Van. Hello, Van. Thank you so much for coming on Push the Next Generation.
I am honored to be here, and I appreciate the opportunity to talk to you.
Absolutely. Well, I honestly don't know where to begin. We first I'll just say you and I connected just navigating life pre-Trump in this new realm. And so I think it's going to be an interesting conversation for people to hear kind of us discussing what's happening now that Trump is in office. And
Yes.
I would love to hear from you first, just like how you're doing, because this is a lot to hold as a human, as someone who's actively doing the work and constantly reporting on the work. Like, it's just a lot. So how are you?
Look, my family is fine. That's the most important thing. I have 4 children, and they're all thriving, and everything else is extra. And also, I feel kind of built for this in a way. I spent 30 years in politics. I didn't start off as like a well-respected, decorative Negro on CNN. Like I started off as a grassroots activist on the front lines in Oakland, California, and San Francisco Mission District, suing cops and trying to close prisons in the 90s during a time when the Democratic Party was on the wrong side of those fights. So I was, suing and challenging Jerry Brown and Willie Brown and Gray Davis and big Democratic heroes, from the left. I'm a champion from the left to look out for the least of these, what those of us in the Christian faith call the least of these, the addicted, the convicted, the afflicted, the evicted, the poorly depicted, the people who don't have very much. And, so, I'm used to having to fight with the odds against me. And I'm used to, it was a very brief period of time where, for 20 seconds after George Floyd, people kind of cared about black folks and criminal justice was an issue. But I was around for 30 years before that when, that wasn't the case at all. So this is a big setback for democracy. It's a big setback for justice. I think all the people who said that, Trump was just joking and it wasn't going to be, as bad as he said, and he was just saying that for laughs. It turns out it's much worse. I'm hearing from African-American women who are in my age group. I'm in my 50s, women in their 40s and their 50s who did all the right things. They went to school. They got another degree. Maybe they got 2 more degrees. They are taxpayers. They are homeowners. They are churchgoers. They are the pillars of their extended families. And, these Doge cuts, they are being thrown out. from their $80,000 a year, $90,000 a year job. If they'd gone in the corporate sector, they might have been making 10x that in a fair world. But they chose to serve communities. They chose to help people. They also recognized that the corporate sector in the 70s, 80s, and 90s was pretty hostile toward black women. And so they went into government service, not-for-profit service. Their grants were being pulled. They're being laid off. These are not women who are prepared to go out and launch some new technology firm. These are women who have given their life to public service, and they are being crushed on a daily basis. And so all those people who said, oh, well, it doesn't matter, and we don't like Kamala, and we don't like Biden, and we don't like this, and we don't like that, and we're sick of this, and Gaza that, and all sort of stuff. Okay, well, what are you going to say to these women? These are not fat cats. These are not military contractors. These are your aunts. These are your uncles. These are the women who have held up the community that are now the main thing. And then that's not just the government side. Then in the corporate sector, a lot of sisters were pushed into HR roles, into DEI roles. Now those are being and then for the everyday person, the AI wave is coming. Artificial intelligence is coming. It's going to knock out a lot of jobs. So we're triple squeezed now. And this is not the folks we're used to talking about in the black community who, Pookie and Snoopy and Shanae, the folks on the street corners who we're trying to help. This is
a different group.
This is the middle class. This is the pillar of the community that is now under direct fire. So, I'm prepared to fight. I've tried to be a bridge builder, and I've tried to be, somebody who looks for common ground and looks for hope in tough times, and I'll continue doing that. But right is right and wrong is wrong. And if Barack Obama had run in the White House and immediately brought all his friends from Chicago, and they brought laptops and started, downloading all the information, the right wing would have been in the streets, and rightfully so, because there's a right way and a wrong way to do anything, and there's a stupid and a dumb way to do anything. And just to unleash Elon Musk, who hasn't been vetted by anybody, appointed by anybody, or approved by anybody, on our government with a bunch of young white dudes with laptops, and give them, privileges and access that people with the highest security clearances in America can't get, and expect everything to work out well is the height of foolishness. And we have to say the truth about what's fair and what's not, and what's right and what's wrong.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I mean, just hearing you talk about like the middle class particularly being squeezed, it just reminds me of like all the things that VP Harris was running for. Like she specifically had a full platform to like save us from the very thing that is happening right now. So, I mean, I think I can speak for myself and a lot of people who, at least those in my generation who are actively looking towards, we're not going to get everything out of any person who's working in government. That's just not how this works. And so understanding that and saying, I'm going to choose this choice because it's the one that actually works out best for all of us in these circumstances. It's really hard being a member of this generation and feeling like, oh, well, what do I do now? Like I didn't win. And what does that mean? And if I didn't win, how do I continue to keep going? And I think about like student movements who lost in many ways, like COINTELPRO. Like I can look to all these different moments where like we were pushed back as young people. And I'm just wondering from your standpoint, like, what do we do as young people in this moment to push forward?
Well, look, sometimes you lose in life. Sometimes you lose. Sometimes you get broken up with. Sometimes a parent dies. Sometimes you get a bad diagnosis from your doctor. And then the question is, how do you turn a breakdown into a breakthrough? That is a fundamental challenge in every human life. You are going to lose. In fact, everything that you have, ultimately you're going to lose. You're going to lose your parents. You're going to lose your health. You're going to lose your own life. So life is not about always winning and always gaining. And, social media can sometimes give you a false impression that it's all upside. And that's just not life. My successes have given me my confidence. But it's my setbacks that have given me my character. It's your setbacks that give you your character. No pressure, no diamonds, is what I would say. This is a time of real pressure. And we are going to have to get very good at helping each other. It's much better if you have a functional democracy and you can vote for people who will then pass laws and tax people fairly and run good programs. We're probably not going to have that. And
Yeah.
so there's some grief, a loss of expectations. It's not fair, but it wasn't fair that we took over here 400 years ago either. And it wasn't fair that we had 100 years of Jim Crow terror and harassment and lynchings, and that wasn't fair either. So you can't complain too much as a young generation, because even now you're still way better off than our parents and grandparents were, and we really haven't put up a fight. We haven't. I mean, people are still just realizing that we just landed on a different planet.
Yeah.
And when you land on a different planet, you got to get oriented. You got to figure out what's going on. This is a different planet. Ecologically, it's different. With fires and floods and hurricanes. Geopolitically, it's different, with authoritarian governments on the rise and democracies on the decline. Politically, it's different, with right-wing populist movements, objectively, explicitly pro-dictatorship movements on the rise throughout the West. Demographically, it's different, in that America's grandparents look like Sweden. America's grandchildren look like the United Nations. That's different. And then technologically, it's different in that, AI is coming and biotech and all these different things. That's a lot of change. And change is difficult. And if you expected it to be easy, because we spent the past 10 years canceling each other and calling each other out about stuff that now looks pretty petty, then you might have assumed we were going to be sitting on the couch, with a soft century, eating bonbons and working our phones to sort of like cancel people for not being good enough. That is not the century that you're in, it turns out. You're in a tougher century. You're in a century where there's a lot of change to digest, and we're going to have to be kinder to each other. We're going to have to help each other. We're going to have to love each other. We're going to have to listen to each other. We're going to have to quit rushing to explain how somebody's wrong, or imposing these speech codes. You didn't say it the right way. All that stuff is spoiled brat behavior of trust fund babies who have benefited from a civil rights movement that they did not fight, benefited from a labor movement they did not build, drive on roads that they did not pave, walk into buildings they did not construct, and act like a bunch of brats. And that's not just your generation. That goes all the way up through my generation. Too much spoiled brat behavior. And now, who can you help? Who can you help? Somebody's having a bad day. What can you do to help that person? What can you join? What can you start? And, those are the kind of questions. We sit up here and, I can tell you everything the progressive did wrong, everything Republicans are doing wrong, but at the end of the day, it's going to come down to human beings helping each other.
Yeah, absolutely. And I definitely want to touch on that. One of the things that you said that really stuck out to me, I guess, is there's this notion, I know, at least generationally for me, that I can recall, but I think you're also saying that it kind of transcends, is like this historical amnesia that we have. And I don't know if it's because we live in an anti-intellectual society. Like, there's so many different reasons that exists, but I know that particularly, like, I'm 25, so I think about like the context of my life and how much more there is to live and how much I don't know about what happened before me. And I think about doing that work, because when you see the warning signs of somebody like Trump, who's now in office, it reminds me of the warning signs of what was happening when Hitler was becoming in office. Like, there's these things where if you look at the historical connectivity, you can kind of, I guess, prepare yourself. And I don't know, like, I think about Germany and all these things, and I just look at like, okay, well, they had the Allied powers come together to come stop this. We don't have Allied powers, at least to my knowledge, coming to save America right now. Like, this is a boat that we're in, and we're on our own, and we see Europe deciding we're going to do our own thing. Like, we're now in a different space. And so I don't know what necessarily resistance looks like in this new space. And I don't know if you have any insights there, but I also know that there's so many people who are just like, we're doing nothing. Like, I don't know how much we're doing. There's some people fighting, but I don't see a resistance movement trying to actively stop this, unless I'm just not being fed that information.
We're early, it's early days. It's only been a month, and they used their last 4 years when Trump was out of office very well, and we did not. And I think that the first thing you have to do is to look in the mirror. I think a lot of people want to spend a lot of time criticizing Republicans and criticizing Elon Musk and criticizing Donald Trump. And I was just on TV last night doing exactly that. among us when we're talking. The question is self-assessment. If you go to the Super Bowl and lose by 50 points, you can blame the other team or you can look at yourself. And it doesn't feel good. Everybody doesn't, and people, Van Jones is always doing the both sides thing and blah, blah, blah. He doesn't attack the right wing enough. Look, I can't fix the right wing. I'm not a right winger. I can't fix my neighbor's family. I'm not a member of that family. But I can hopefully bring something to my own family and to my own side of honest self-reflection. Did we do enough, and are we doing enough, to make non-college men feel comfortable with progressives? That's a real question. If you're a college-educated woman, you probably at least feel comfortable in the progressive conversation. You could go to that meeting. You could raise your hand. You would feel literate. You would feel respected. I'm not saying you would face some sexism in some places. I'm not saying that. But there's a fundamental way that things are a little bit more familiar. If you're a non-college dude, can you come to these meetings? Are you going to feel comfortable? Can you raise your hand and speak and be heard? I don't know. I think we let a lot of non-college men get away from us, including African American and Latino non-college men. I think you have to ask the question: were there unintended consequences in the way that we talked about some of the so-called cultural issues? To me, they're not cultural issues; they're live or die issues for my community. But the media calls them cultural. Okay, so there were things that we were trying to communicate during the Black Lives Matter moment about unconscious bias, about subconscious bias, unintentional bias. But some of these workshops were not put on by people who were very nuanced and skillful. Mm-hmm. And they were being delivered to people who had not heard about this stuff before. And you have to ask the question, did it sound like we were just saying all white people are racist and they're just going to be racist and they're just, and the first thing they got to do is admit that they're bigots, admit that they're, because that message can work on a college campus. It can work among liberal, white, college-educated people. They have enough self-esteem and enough, security that they can hear that kind of stuff, that kind of challenge. But you go to their cousin, you go to their grandfather with some, you got a bunch of privilege and you need to give it up, and you're a racist and a hater, and the only question is, are you conscious or unconscious about how much of a bigot you are? That may not go down the way you expect it to.
Right.
Is there a way that we could communicate the same thing differently? Because if you have a message that begins to sound like, not intentionally, I'm saying you got to now look at the impact. Did it sometimes sound like we were saying all men are toxic, all white people are racist, all billionaires are evil, all Jews are colonizers? Mm-hmm. Is there a way that you begin to say, if you're in any of those groups, well, hold on a second. You suck. You're a bigot. You're a hater. You have privileges you don't deserve. You need to have less so I can have more. You suck. Follow me. Did anybody test this?
That messaging does not resonate. Even if you were the best of a human being, that messaging does not resonate.
Gandhi would be like, hold up. You know what I mean? Like, Dr. King would be like, hold up. Like, so you have to begin to look at, where was the love? Your father, Reverend Jackson, Dr. King, Andrew Young, Ella Jo Baker, Fannie Lou Hamer. You never lost track of the love, even when they were challenging America. But if you just have the challenge with no love, is that going to work? Especially when you know that Putin is out there, is going to take anything and make it even more extreme. When you know that China, Iran, North Korea are out there going to take anything we say and make it more extreme. I think we have to look in the mirror and say, listen, I can understand why some people who left this party may have just not felt comfortable. I love the circle that the Democratic Party has drawn so far. I love the circle including LGBTQ folks who've been left out for too long. I love it including Muslims who've been left out too long. I love it including immigrants who've been left out too long, women who've been left out, black. I love that we have a circle that includes those people. But the question is, did we accidentally draw that circle too small? Were there some straight white boys who were hurting? Were there some straight white boys who were 56, 57 years old, who have bad health outcomes, who are scared of losing their jobs, whose son is on meth, whose daughter went to college and now won't speak to him, saying, "Daddy, you're a bigot," and who don't know where to turn? Did we have a place for them? We used to have a place for those union guys. But that wasn't as hip and slick. It became not too hip and slick to say nice stuff about straight white guys. It almost became, if you just say straight white male, you automatically are the villain. You're automatically wrong. Even if you're a football coach helping poor black kids, even if you're a grandpa with black and brown grandchildren, even if you did vote for Trump, but you also are, like I said, working at a little league, you're just a straight white male and screw you. Well, hold on a second. You can't be mad then if they then go to a different camp. All billionaires are evil. Oprah's a billionaire. She's not evil. What are you talking about? Like all Jews are colonizers? Well, hold on a second. Now, have you ever been to Israel? Half of the Jews are brown, people of color. Over there from Tunisia, from Ethiopia, from Egypt, they got chased out of every country. They're just because they were Jewish. They didn't just get chased out of Europe. They got chased out of Africa and the whole Middle East, and they're there. And then there's 6 million people in Israel. 1 million of them are Muslims in Israel. So, but all Jews are colonizers? Okay, guys, if you start speaking that way, or even if it's not fair, but you sound like you're speaking that way, then is that something we can change? Can we put some more love in? Can we make sure people know that we're not going to ever deny the pain of the past, but we're also not going to let the pain have the last word, because tomorrow's more important than yesterday, and we need each other. Can we make it a little bit easier for people to take our side? Or do you gotta, you're gonna crawl through broken glass and kiss my toes and apologize for being who you are and apologize for all your privilege, and then maybe we'll consider letting you stick around until we cancel you anyway.
Right.
That's not a cool thing to invite people into, and they're not coming.
Yeah, it sounds like there's a lack of nuance. And I think a lot of what you were saying in terms of the circle that we've built reminds me of my dad's 84 and 88 campaigns and that level of coalition building and the importance of that. He brought in the farmers. He brought in people from Appalachia. He brought in Latinos. He brought in Jews. Like there was a sense of everybody is welcome here. And, that those ideas didn't win in that election, and we tried in Obama's. Like, I think that there was concerted efforts, but there have been some shifts, and I also think social media is to blame for a lot of that too. And I talked to you a little bit about, I fear for the soul, like the moral soul of my generation. I fear that the algorithm is just dividing us in a way that is going to be so catastrophic to the ways that we can coalition build in the future. We've talked about the Black and Jewish Alliance, which I'd love to kind of delve into. Like, when you see this neo-Nazi, this movement being just thrust upon a whole group of people, and it doesn't just show up when we're looking at the Sig Heils happening at these crazy conventions. It doesn't happen in those spaces. It's also in the small words. It's in the captions. It's in the person who's your friend who's reposting a post that makes you go, well, I do care about marginalized groups, so maybe this is the right ideology. Whenever we're getting into the all Jews are evil, all Palestinians are wrong, like when we start these conversations, pro this, pro that, pro humanity is where I think we have to kind of reframe. And it sounds all la la woo woo, but it really is I think a catastrophe.
Look, when somebody says I'm for Israel, I say, okay, which Israelis are you talking about? Because they're the Israelis who live on kibbutz right next to Gaza, who are liberal and progressive and loving and got butchered by Hamas, right-wing terrorist organization that's against everything that progressives stand for? Or do you mean the Israelis who are on the West Bank who are settlers who themselves are right wing, and very, very violent toward Palestinians. So you have some Palestinians that are very violent toward Israelis. You have some Israelis that are very violent toward Palestinians. So which Israelis are you talking about? Oh, I'm from Palestine. Which Palestinians are you talking about? Like, see, you're talking about something as if it's one thing. It's like saying, I'm for the Americans. Well, which Americans are you talking about? Like, that's not as useful, right?
Right.
Same thing. So if that strikes you as shocking, that somebody's saying I'm for the Americans, you can tell right away. Well, you need to clarify your statement, because we have Nazis in America, we have Buddhists in America, we have MLK followers in America, we have so the same thing. You can't say I'm for Israel. I'm for the Israelis. I'm for the Palestinians. Which ones are you actually talking about? And if you can't answer that question, maybe don't talk as much, because maybe you don't have enough information to become a vector through your social media of either position. And so I think that's important. And then I'm also very concerned. We talk about the Black-Jewish Alliance. A lot of younger people don't even know what that is. They haven't even heard of that. They haven't heard those two words together. And that's a shame, because we would not be here in terms of even having the democracy that we do have if it had not been for Black people and Jewish people coming together in 1909 to create a Black-Jewish alliance called the NAACP.
Most people don't even know that the NAACP had Jews involved at all. There's no conscious understanding. We see the NAACP Image Awards, which is a beautiful celebration of Black culture, but there's no association of that brand in that. I mean, people who work in NAACP have a knowledge of history, but that does not transfer to the zeitgeist at all.
No, I mean, it's crazy. The Urban League was founded the next year in 1910, also a Black-Jewish alliance. You ask the question, why was it called the National Association for the Advancement of Colored People? Because Jews were not considered white at that time. White is a category that has morphed and changed and gotten bigger and smaller over the years. Just like you look at the map of Europe, the countries change in size, and this used to be Austria, and now it's Germany, and blah, blah, blah. I mean, borders shape and move. By the way, borders are not from God. Borders are the result of politics and wars in the Middle East. Borders are the result of politics and wars in the United States. California, Arizona used to be Mexico. Now they're not. I don't want Mexicans firing a bunch of rockets up here about that, okay? These borders do move around. And also, the borders around racial groups move around. And Jews used to be not white. Italians used to be not white. Irish used to be not white. Yeah. And so in those days, we were two groups being discriminated against. And by the way, it wasn't all Blacks loving all Jews and all Jews loving all Blacks. That never happened. It's always been small groups of people who really recognize their own culture. The Jewish culture has a DNA called repair the world.
Yeah, Tikkun Olam, yeah.
And so no matter what happened to Jews for 2,000 years, 3,000 years, they got chased out of every country. They had to sleep with a go bag ready to go in case in an instant they were going to be turned against and killed by Cossacks. That went on for thousands of years. But they never let go of that piece of their cultural DNA of repair the world. So whenever they got a little bit of the boot off their neck, they became very generous, very philanthropic, very involved in causes. It's a part of the cultural DNA of Jewish people. Cultural DNA of Black people, justice for all. That's why Black people, up until very, very recently, we were fighting for immigrants. Most of us are not immigrants. Fighting for LGBTQ folks, even though in our churches, most of our churches don't really approve of that. We still can't stand to see somebody discriminated against, mistreated. The disability rights movement, disproportionately Black folks in there. So we believe in justice for all. That's our cultural DNA. Jews believe in repairing the world. That's their cultural DNA. When you put those two DNA groups together, even in small numbers, you get a double helix of hope for humanity. And that has been a consistent pattern throughout that whole last century. It doesn't stop in the 60s with Dr. King and Rabbi Heschel. It goes all the way through. You look at most Black colleges today, turn over the annual report and look at the names of the people who are donating. Jewish name, Jewish name, Jewish name. You look at most Black candidates. Where do they get their initial support from? It'll be some liberal Jewish person will have a fundraiser at their house. You look at most Black causes. Turn over the annual reports for our not-for-profit organizations. Jewish name, Jewish name, Jewish name. You look at, your public defender was probably Jewish. You look at, the kids who go to these fancy schools and then go teach for America, disproportionately Jewish. And so the idea that this was 1,000 years ago is not true. It's persisted up until, the present day. But the thing is that they don't usually jump up and down and say, I'm Jewish, I'm Jewish. So we think it's just a bunch of cool white people.
Mm-hmm.
It's not that many cool white people. A whole bunch of Jews. There's a whole bunch of Jews with white skin, white presenting Jews, that are up in these causes because of that cultural DNA. But when you don't know that, and they don't underscore it, and we don't underscore it over time, then you let the word Jewish be defined by people who don't like Jewish people. And there's a lot of people who don't like Jewish people.
Mm-hmm.
And they have their reasons, and they have their stories. But truth is truth, lies are lies, history is history. And what you now call American democracy would not exist if you had not had a disproportionate number of a small group, very brave black people, and then a small group, not all of them, a small group of very brave Jewish people who got side by side and fought every decade, all the way through to 2009. Who walked into the White House with Barack Obama and Michelle Obama? David Axelrod and Rahm Emanuel. It's black and Jewish from 1909 to 2009. You cannot get away. Who is standing with Nelson Mandela? Joe Slovo. I mean, you can't get away from that dynamic now. Doesn't mean Jews are always right or blacks are always right. Doesn't mean we haven't had our differences and our conflicts. We may not agree on how things are being handled, in certain conflicts and wars. Black people don't, in general, support wars like the one you see in Gaza. Didn't support Vietnam, didn't support Iraq. That's not our type of thing. But you still can't reduce it to just where we don't get along, where we don't agree, where we've had conflict. You also have to look at where we have gotten along and where we made progress together. And I'm just looking for balance and nuance. And we have to ask the question now, have we conducted ourselves when it came to race and gender and all these issues in a way that accidentally left the door open for people who really do not like us to take advantage and to pull, the allies. Dr. King, 68, with the Poor People's March, was trying to bring us together with our allies. Your father, Reverend Jackson, 84, 88, with the Rainbow Coalition, took the same idea, brought it into electoral politics, trying to expand our alliances. Obama, 2008, took that concept and actually won the White House with it. So from 68, 88, 2008, you see a politics of black alliance-ship getting bigger, stronger, more sophisticated, and ultimately becoming the governing coalition for America. And then we somehow lost the plot.
Yeah,
And now that doesn't even seem like what we should be doing when that's the only thing that's really worked for us.
Yeah, I think looking at that thread, watching VP Harris's campaign, and there was a lot of geopolitical things happening, which I want to get into at the same time, but she also was running on that platform to me. I could literally look at certain speeches and be like, oh, I heard elements of that in 84. I heard these things. I was at the DNC. I was watching the same kind of thread being weaved in real time. And so I think losing that does beg questions about, had we lost it before she had even started? She only had 100 days. That's besides the point. But, had that connectivity already been broken before she started running, which is why she didn't win. And if that's the answer, then that is some of the work that I think we need to be doing. I'm looking at a generation who's isolated. We don't know our neighbors. I live in a building right now. I don't know anybody on my floor. And so what does it look like when you don't know that your friend is Jewish because they're not discussing those things with you and they're white presenting? What does it look like when then they're hurting? I have Palestinian friends. I have Jewish friends. They're hurting. And my inclination, the minute either group was hurting, wasn't a response to what was happening in the world, whether or not I agree with settler colonialism, which I don't, but whether I support Israel. None of those things mattered. My friend was hurting. So I said, I hope you're doing okay. And I think we're so into these binaries and into these ideological frameworks that most people are just reading on Twitter and they don't even have a framework, to be fair. And we're looking at like, okay, I don't agree with this policy, or I don't agree with this one thing, so now my whole relationship with you is derailed. But relationships are all we have, and if we don't have those, then like I don't know what we're doing as a generation. I don't think that there can be a coalition building without us actually doing some of that work in person.
Look, I think that's 100% right. And for me, I am in a period of real self-reflection. I look at whenever you have an adversary, you have to assess their intentions and their capabilities. And when I assess the intentions of this right-wing populism that's rising, these are very bad intentions. Donald Trump could do what he's doing legally and constitutionally. He could just go to Congress like every other president and say, I think these programs need to be zeroed out. I think these programs need to be supported. I think we need to have a force reduction of 20% across the board. And he could present that bill or have that bill presented. They could pass it through the House, pass it through the Senate, which he controls both, sign that bill. If somebody challenges it, they can go to the Supreme Court, which he controls, and it could all be done legally and constitutionally. He is deliberately doing it illegally and unconstitutionally because this movement does not believe in constitutional democracy. They believe in authoritarianism. And if you look up people like Curtis Yarvin, like Marvin with a Y, Curtis Yarvin, he's a philosopher that is paid for by Peter Thiel, who's one of the big supporters of the Republicans. He's listened to, Curtis Yarvin, by J.D. Vance. He's obviously influenced Elon Musk. And Curtis Yarvin, who Peter Thiel and J.D. Vance praise, doesn't even believe in democracy. He literally says we should have a CEO monarch, in other words, a dictator in the United States. And he came up with a plan to how you could do it by taking over the federal government and firing. It's called RAGE. That was his plan. And RAGE is basically just Doge in action. So you have the intentions here are not to honor constitutional democracy. We were told for 200 years we had to do everything that we wanted to under the Constitution, following the law. Anybody got outside the law, COINTELPRO, shot, put in jail, ran out of the country. And so we've been trying to follow this Constitution and have it live up to its letter. They're just tearing it down. So the intentions of our opponents are very bad, and their capabilities are massive because they not only have the White House and the Senate and the House and the Supreme Court, they also have Elon Musk, who by himself is worth $400 billion, a bunch of billionaires in the cabinet, and a bunch of people from Silicon Valley and technology have jumped the fence into the dark side. And they even call it the dark enlightenment. Look that term, dark enlightenment, Curtis Yarvin. So that's really bad. Kamala's sin was that she was trying to defend the status quo. She had her vision about where she wanted to go, but she couldn't just turn around and say, by the way, Joe, you a fool, and I disagree with you on this end.
Yeah.
Because that's not the role of the vice president.
At all.
And so, it was never happened. Even in '68, you didn't see the vice president break with Johnson, and when Johnson dropped out, and so that put her in a very tough spot because people don't like the status quo. They don't like what's going on, and the danger for progressives is that in trying to defend all these institutions and trying to defend right and wrong and trying to defend the Constitution, trying to defend the rule of law, trying to defend the separation of powers, you wind up defending a status quo that everybody hates. That's the challenge. We have to come up with a third way out. That's not the broken status quo that everybody hates, where rich are getting richer and the poor are getting poorer and that type of, and nothing is getting better. Or you go crazy with this right wing, burn the Constitution down, do whatever you want to, and now we have a king. What is the third way out where you can have a different future that's a better future? Not a different future that's a worse future. A different future where there's more empowerment for the people and less dictatorship versus a different future where there's more disempowerment for people and we all have to worship some king. And so that is the work of your generation. And it's not the work of a day or an afternoon or a weekend or an electoral cycle. That's a generation's work to come forward with ideas, to come forward with proposals, to come forward with new companies, to come forward with new technologies. Please, no more not-for-profits. We have enough not-for-profits. Come forward with something that's going to make some money because these grants are going away. But to come forward with new gatherings, come forward with new music, come forward with new plays, come forward with new video games, come forward with new hope for humanity. And it will not happen overnight. And it will take a decade or more. It may take two. This is a big setback for humanity. It's a big setback for democracy. It's a big setback for justice. But you still are in a better position than your grandparents were. And, everybody wants to talk about their trauma and trauma. I'm all for mental health. But you know who's really traumatized? Your great-grandparents who were dealing with lynchings and everything else. You know what they never talked about? Their own trauma. You know what they talked about? They talked about tomorrow. They talked about their faith. They talked about their hopes for their children. We thought if you thought it was going to be a soft century, it's not going to be.
No.
And so we have to get tough. We're going to have to stop talking about trigger warnings, stop talking about how traumatized we are, stop talking about all these different things that just basically the weakest person gets to win every argument because it's all about throwing a pity party as opposed to building a people's party. That's the problem.
That's a lot to sit with. I mean, I think looking at the through lines of where we've come from, I really feel like part of my work has been to try to encourage us to look back so that we can see that this is not the first time that this has happened. Because I think some of it too is that like there's a shock and awe every time we look. We just saw Trump's AI Gaza ad, which was horrendous, but like this is not the first time that somebody has been in power and horrible things have happened to people here. Horrible things have happened to people around the globe. And so having that framework, I think, if nothing else, reminds us that like we can't all just sit back and act like it's not happening. There has to be concerted efforts, and we can take breaks. I mean, it's literally only been a month, as you said, but we have to start that kind of discussing and figuring out new ways forward.
Number one, study your opponents. Oh, I can't watch Fox. Oh, I can't look at it. Look now, quit being weak. Stop with the weak stuff, the weak talk. There's a book called Regime Change. It's a little bit slow read, it's a little bit heady, but it just lays out the whole philosophy of what these people are doing. And it goes back to Locke and Hume and Plato and Aristotle. These boys have put some work in to figure out how to tear down democracy. You need to, if you're college educated and you can read all about intersectionality, you can read the book Regime Change. If you can read about all these other things, you can read Curtis Yarvin with his evil self. So you understand your enemy. You have to understand your opponent. You can't assume the same way if they just assume about us. They always get it wrong. The left this, the left that. You don't know this group from that group. You don't know what the hell you're talking about. And so, but we're guilty of the same thing. First of all, know your opponent. Second of all, know your history. Everything that we're going through, somebody else has already gone through. What did Nelson Mandela do when the government went way wrong? I mean, you don't always have apartheid in South Africa. Once the black people started getting some momentum, they imposed apartheid. And he had to come up with a whole strategy, and his colleagues and Winnie Mandela, the whole strategy to figure out how to roll that back. And it took 40 years. Sometimes it takes that long. And he spent 27 of them in jail. I hope none of us have to go through that. But you have to look at history. And then you also just have to get out there and try stuff. There's not going to be an overnight answer, but you might come up with something. You might throw up something that goes viral, or you might create some event where some people meet each other and something positive happens, or you might meet somebody who's running for dog catcher or city council who in 20 years might be president of the United States. That happened to me. It was Barack Obama. So, but it takes time. And everybody's like, well, what's going to happen tomorrow? Tomorrow's going to suck because these idiots are in charge and they're going to do terrible things. And you don't have the ability to stop them. And so the question is, are you going to be bitter or better when your turn comes? When your turn comes, are you going to be bitter or better? Will you have used this time to get smarter, to get more healthy, to work on your faith and your spiritual strength, your resilience? Have you helped actual human beings so you know what you're talking about? It's not just Doge this and Trump that. But no, this woman right here, like I said, when we first started off, who did everything right and who's now going to be homeless with 2 degrees because Elon Musk is just acting like an ass. Like, can we become you have to deserve victory. You have to deserve victory. And that's Winston Churchill. He says you have to deserve victory. Now, Hitler could have won. And we could have had 1,000 years of darkness. We're lucky that, people stood up. But what I would say is that every day, do I deserve victory? And by the way, if I had to run the country, could I do it? Would I know enough about the folks in Appalachia, the folks in border towns, the folks on Native reservations, the folks on Wall Street, the folks in Silicon Valley, the folks in the hood, the folks at HBCUs? Would I know enough to be able to lead this country if I were called to serve? Because, by the way, I was suddenly called to serve Barack Obama's administration out of the streets of Oakland as a young lawyer in Oakland. And in some ways I was ready, some ways I wasn't. But, you have a circle of concern, which is this big. You have a circle of influence, which you can do is about that big.
Right.
If you spend your time focusing on your concerns and don't do anything about where you actually can make a difference, where you can make a difference actually gets smaller. But if you spend your time focusing, okay, I can't deal with all this, but I can help my neighbor. I can get on my WhatsApp group and figure out a way to raise some money for that sister. I can start something to get scholarships to people. Now your influence actually gets bigger by focusing on what you can do something about, rather than sitting up here doom scrolling and tweeting about stuff you have no damn power over anyway. And by the way, when you post something, here's what we did in the neighborhood. Here's what we did with our sisters. Here's what we did with our brothers. Here's what we did with the veterans in our community. Here's what we did with the folks who lost their scholarship money. That's going to go more viral anyway.
Right.
So if what you want to do is get attention, which seems to be all people care about in the first damn place,
Yeah.
get attention for actually showing up and doing something. And by the way, when you try and do something, it turns out it's very difficult. People said they're going to show up, they don't show up. Somebody said they're going to bring the food, they didn't bring the food. Now you're having to work hard to figure out how to make community better. And when you do, now you become something that is very valuable and very respected because you actually are about something and not just about looking like you're about something. And so listen, treat it, we're in the dojo now. This is the boot camp for humanity. No, it's not going to be easy. Okay, y'all want to sit up here for 10 years and cancel each other. All right. You want to sit up here for 10 years and call each other out. You want to sit up here for 10 years and it's all Real Housewives of bullshit. All right. So God said, okay, now y'all going to boot camp. Now you're going to have to do hard stuff. You sit up here and be soft and ignorant and weak and everybody's got trigger warnings and everybody's so upset and easily traumatized. I'm like, all right, okay, now we're going to give you a hard century so your generation can actually become who it's supposed to be. No pressure, no diamonds. Okay, we could have spent the past 10 years loving everybody, lifting everybody up, showing grace, showing forgiveness, and building off of what your father talked about. But instead, we spent 10 years tearing each other down. And now we're too weak to fight. Congratulations. Can we now get back to the real work of helping somebody?
Yeah. Thank you for that. That was so many gems, and I hope that people in my generation and beyond hear and resonate with that, because it is essential. Like, there is no moving forward unless we actually get to the ground and do that work in our communities. So thank you so much, man. This was really delightful. We could go on for hours about all of the things, but I really appreciate it.
As we often do.
Like, as we do.
Yeah, but listen, hey, look, I appreciate being included. I'm glad my laptop didn't die on me, and hopefully we can do it again. I appreciate everything that you're doing. I have a lot of confidence in your generation. I have a lot of respect for your generation. I talk tough to you guys because I believe you can do a lot more. Your dad's generation didn't talk soft to us at all. They said, look, you guys need
I'm like, he doesn't talk soft to me. Get to work.
Exactly. Yeah. So that's a part of love too. I know you guys can do better than sitting up here, throwing pity parties. We need a people's party, and you guys can build one.
Amen. Well, thank you for that. We will talk soon. This
right.
was Van on Push the Next Generation, everyone.
All right. Peace.
Thank you for tuning in to another special episode of Push the Next Generation. Be sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel, Push the Next Generation, recommend it to a friend, follow on socials at Push the Next Generation Pod. Thank you so much for watching and listening. See you soon on Push the Next Generation. In the meantime, say hello to a neighbor, check on a friend, build community in person. This is Ashley Jackson signing off.